All right, good morning. Welcome back to the farm. I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk a little bit about 5 things that we're not growing anymore and why. First of all, we're in a tunnel full of cover crop today. We are transitioning between our summer grow and our fall grow. So during the heat of the summer, we put most of the farm into cover crop and let it rest while we take a break also. And then towards the end of July, first week of August, we'll start mowing all this cover crop down and pulling tarps on it and killing it off. And this picture is what it looks like when it's full grown. This is about half grown right now. And then this picture is what it looks like after we cut it and pull a tarp on it. And that'll sit for 2, maybe 3 weeks, depending on the stage of growth and how thick the stalks and whatnot are. And then it will look like this. And that final picture, you'll see some weeds and kind of in the back and around the edge. We'll go in and pull those by hand before we begin production. But that last tunnel is now ready for some amendments, a coat of compost, down the rows, and will be turned into radishes and turnips here in the next week. We're just waiting on the compost delivery to get that kicked off. At any rate, what we're here to talk about today is the 5 things that we're not growing anymore and why. The first one, I don't have a bag with me, but the first one is a kale mix that we get from one of our providers. It's designed to be grown for about 28 days and produces around 35 to 40 pounds worth of mixed baby greens per bed, per 50-foot bed when it grows. It grows very strong. It is slightly heat tolerant. It produces a great kale mix. Unfortunately, we have not been able to sell it very well. We get very limited engagement with it at the table, and we've only had one restaurant that wanted just a couple of pounds per week. The rest of them said it was beautiful, but people didn't want it. Like, they would pick it and put it to the side. So not a whole lot of engagement from anybody. It is one of the first mixes that we started to grow. I do enjoy growing it. It's easy, it's fast, and it's colorful and tasteful. However, we just could not get the engagement on it, so it's one of those things that will just not be grown anymore. The others, let's go through the list real quick. First one I'm going to talk about is fennel. When I first started with the market garden concept, there were certain vegetables that a very prominent market gardener pushed, and he was like, these are high yielding of plant, high yield of income, and lots of engagement with it from customers. And I was like, okay, we'll put that on the grow list. So the first time I grew it, I grew one bed, which is 250 bulbs, and I threw probably 200 of them away. They all came ready about the same time, and I just could not get them sold. We really didn't have any engagement whatsoever. And keep in mind that the full-size bulb takes 80 days. That's a long time to sit on one of these beds. Now, our farm is built on an economic premise of each bed has to make rent every 45 days, and that's a certain amount of money that we need that bed to produce. When you have an 80-day grow, that just about doubles how much that bed has to produce, off of the same amount of product. So it makes it a little more expensive for this to push. Either that, or we take a loss on the product in order to have variety. And that was the route that I took on this. I took a loss on the financial income in order to be able to put variety on the table and hopefully get a clientele or build up a more consistent clientele with it. The second iteration that we did at the second year that we grew these, I grew it 25 feet at a time, which is 125 bulbs. And I did one about 3 weeks behind the other, so I had a little bit of a succession. So that put that entire bed out of commission for roughly 100 days. And with that said, that's 2.5 bed flips, twice 2.5 times the bed rent, and we still couldn't sell them all. So then this past season, what we tried was, let's do 20 bulbs at a time, and we'll do 20 every week. Hopefully we can move that many at a time. We couldn't move that many at a time. It's a very aromatic, it's a very pungent flavored vegetable, and a lot of people just don't like fennel. They like it as a trace element in the background, so you need very little to get the flavor you're looking for. But to cut it up and roast it, how I like it, or to mix it into a cucumber salad, how I also like it, there was not a whole lot of engagement. So that one's going to get dropped. Takes too long, not enough customer engagement, and beds just weren't making rent with it. So we'll find something else that people engaged a little bit better. And the next one up is kohlrabi, and this particular vegetable was much the same as the fennel. The market gardener that I was kind of formatting after, you know, apparently his clientele or his environment is a lot different. He talked about how much everybody loved this and the different ways that it could be used, like grating it into a salad using a cheese grater, or, you know, shredding like you would cabbage or carrots even, or cutting it into sticks and sauteing it to make little French fries, or just cube it up and roast it with your other vegetables. I've eaten it all of those ways. I enjoy it all of those. It's a kind of a weird alien looking vegetable. I don't know, it's kind of cool. I enjoyed growing it. I enjoyed eating it, but we couldn't build a clientele with it. There are some other farmers in the area that grow it, but I see the same thing on their table. They're putting out 4 or 5 at a time, maybe 10, and they're still taking half of them home. So not a great demand in this area for that particular vegetable. And after 6 years of trying, I'm just going to let that one go to the wayside. That one you actually didn't see on my table at all this year because I stopped growing it. I made a decision over the winter to not grow it this year. Next up, Mizuna. Now, we grow this in 3 different ways, and I don't want to mislead you when I say that I'm not going to grow Mizuna anymore. The 3 ways that we grow it is a microgreen, which we have a pretty good following for at the table. We also grow it as a baby leaf. It's fast growing, and it's a great addition to the table. I make a comparison that it is like arugula with no bite. It's peppery, but it doesn't bite like arugula does. And then the 3rd way that we tried to grow it was, as you see featured here, as a full-sized head. I saw the pink and the white version in the Baker Creek catalog, and I absolutely had to have it. I was like, those are gorgeous. They'll be a beautiful addition to the table. I want those. So we got them. I grew them. Lots of people picked up the bag and would hold it, and that looks gorgeous. What do I do with it? And then they would put it down. I never could solve that problem. Like, I just couldn't get the engagement that I thought I might get. I did get the reception of how beautiful it was, but I didn't get the engagement of using it. So while we will continue to use it as a microgreen and to a lesser extent as a baby green, because we don't have a massive engagement there, people will take it, but they prefer cut lettuce first. So we'll keep it as those 2 forms, but the head version, as beautiful as it is, as well as it presents on the table, it just doesn't sell. So we got to move it off. The 5th and final one that we're going to drop this year, the market table never actually saw. We produced it for some of the restaurants. We were asked to produce it by a restaurant, and after only 1 season, I've decided this one's not for me. Okay, and the last one that I wanted to talk about that we're not going to grow anymore, we only grew once, and it is sprouting cauliflower, which is a lot like broccolini except for a cauliflower version. We were asked by a couple of chefs to grow it. They said that whenever they got it off the truck, it was already molding or was discolored or just not in good shape, and they were hoping to get a fresher version. So we gave it a shot. The broccolini that we were growing is like 45 to 47 days before you can start snapping the first crowns out. This sprouting broccoli is more like 70 days, and if you remember that 45-day rotation thing that we were talking about, having to produce money every 45 days, it takes 1.5 cycles for it to just start to yield, and then when it does start to yield, it's sporadic and it's not as heavy or as fruitful as the broccolini, so I just wasn't super impressed with it. Tastes great. It's super sweet, has an interesting appearance on the plate, but it's not something that I personally would continue to grow. You know, maybe 1 or 2 for personal consumption, because like I said, they taste great, but for a farm plant, a crop, it just doesn't make sense for us to add in. We can do other things that produce faster and have a greater yield return, so we're going to stick with those. But there you have it. Those are the 5 things that we were no longer planting on this farm. And if you have any thoughts or comments on the 5 that we stopped growing, or if there's some things that you want us to grow that we haven't been growing, by all means, leave that in a comment. If you have any questions about the things that we were growing that we won't be anymore, leave those down there if you have any inputs. Or, I don't know, like if there's a different perspective that I'm not seeing on some of this, drop a comment down below. Thanks.